The Starship Alcatraz, the prison ship that saved the galaxy. Chapter 1. The Ship That Never Sleeps. My name is Captain Alton Granger, Warden of the Federation Security Starship Alcatraz, and the only human being aboard a vessel carrying more nightmares than any sane mind should ever be asked to shepherd. The androids call me Warden. They don't say it with respect or resentment. They say it because their programming tells them to. Everything they do is because their programming tells them to. The Alcatraz is a prison ship, but that phrase doesn't do it justice. It's a mobile oubliette, a drifting prison ship, a kilometer of armored corridors and containment blocks designed to disappear into the dark between stars. Our mission is simple. Travel forever, keeping the galaxy's most violent criminals as far from civilization as possible. There are 1,247 inmates aboard. Murderers, warlords, pirates, deserters, insurgents, and a few whose crimes were so classified even I wasn't allowed to read the files. They sleep behind force fields and reinforced bulkheads, watched by 175 android guards who never tire, never blink, never question. And then there's me, the only heartbeat on a ship full of machines and monsters. My inner circle of android officers all have numeric designations, cold, sterile strings of letters and digits. I could never remember them. So I named them after old Earth movie stars: Bogart, Cagney, Raft, Mitchum, Wells, Widmark, Ladd, and Powers. They accepted the names without comment. They accept everything without comment. 6 years into our voyage, the routine had become a kind of slow suffocation. Wake, inspect, eat alone, review logs, walk the silent corridors, watch ancient holotapes until I fell asleep. Repeat. The androids didn't talk unless spoken to. They didn't laugh. They didn't argue. They didn't even look at me unless I addressed them directly. I'd tried small talk once, early on. Bogart had stared at me with those blank synthetic eyes and said, "Warden, please clarify the operational relevance of this inquiry." I stopped trying after that. Loneliness isn't a sudden thing. It's a slow leak, a quiet erosion, a hollowing out of the chest. I felt it every day. And then the alarms shattered the silence. A shrill, rising wail cut through the command deck. Red lights strobed across the consoles. The deck vibrated beneath my boots as the ship's automated systems shifted into high alert. Bogart turned toward me, his movements precise and eerily smooth. "Warden, long-range sensors detect multiple unidentified vessels emerging from an uncharted wormhole." "How many?" I asked. 200 and rising." I stepped toward the tactical display. The hologram flickered to life, showing a swirling tear in space, an impossible wound in the fabric of the galaxy. And pouring out of it was a fleet unlike anything I'd ever seen. Organic hulls, pulsing energy signatures, a formation pattern that suggested predatory intelligence. "Battle stations," I ordered. The androids obeyed instantly, moving with mechanical efficiency. But as the first alien salvos streaked toward us, I felt a cold realization settle in my gut. Androids could follow orders, but they couldn't improvise. They couldn't anticipate. They couldn't fight the way living beings fought, instinctively, desperately, creatively. The Alcatraz shook as the first blast hit us. Consoles flickered. A shower of sparks rained from an overhead panel. Cagney calmly reported, "Shields at 87%. Another hit. Harder. The deck lurched. I grabbed the railing. "Return fire!" I shouted. The androids complied, but their targeting patterns were textbook. Predictable, rigid, easily countered. The alien ships danced around our shots like they were toying with us. We were going to die. Unless I did something unthinkable. I stared at the tactical display, then at the sealed bulkheads leading to the prison decks below. There were men and women down there who had once commanded fleets, raided convoys, fought in wars, survived battles that would have killed lesser beings. Criminals, yes, but fighters. And right now, I needed fighters. I took a breath, a long, steadying breath. "Bogart," I said quietly, "prepare to open cell block A." The android turned his blank face toward me. "Warden, that action is in violation of—" "That's an order." He paused, then nodded, and just like that, the fate of the Alcatraz, and maybe the galaxy, shifted. I was about to make a deal with devils, and pray they hated these new devils more than they hated me. Chapter 2. The Devil's Bargain. The lift doors slid open with a hiss, and the stale, recycled air of cell block A washed over me. Even after 6 years aboard the Alcatraz, the prison deck still had a smell. Metal, ozone, sweat, and something older, like the ghosts of every bad decision ever made. 2 guard androids flanked me, their footfalls perfectly synchronized. They didn't need to be here. No prisoner on this ship could overpower an android. But protocol demanded escorts, and androids never questioned protocol. The force fields lining the corridor glowed a cold blue. Behind each one, a monster waited. Some paced like caged animals. Some sat motionless, staring at nothing. Some stared at me. I stopped at the central control node. "Open the cells of all inmates with prior fleet or combat experience," I ordered. Bogart's voice crackled through the overhead speakers. "Warden, this action violates Federation Security Directive." "I know what it violates," I snapped. "Do it." A pause. Then the force fields flickered and dropped. The prisoners stepped out. Not all of them, only those I'd requested, maybe 30 in total. But they were 30 of the most dangerous beings ever to walk free. A towering reptilian warlord with scars like molten rivers across his scales. A human woman with cybernetic arms and a stare that could cut steel. A former fleet commander who'd gone rogue and taken half a battalion with him. And at the back, leaning casually against a bulkhead, was Rasher Saride, pirate, smuggler, murderer, and, according to his file, unreasonably charismatic. He grinned at me. "Warden, to what do we owe the pleasure?" I took a breath. "We're under attack. Alien fleet. Hundreds of ships. My androids can't handle real combat. You can." A ripple of interest moved through the group. "You help me defend this ship," I said, "and I'll do everything in my power to get you pardons. Full pardons. Clean slates." Silence. Then Rasher laughed. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." The reptilian warlord stepped forward, towering over me. "Why should we trust you, human?" "Because if you don't," I said, "you'll die in your cells when the Alcatraz goes down. And if you do, you might live long enough to walk free again." Rasher pushed off the wall. "Hell, Warden, you should have led with that." A few prisoners nodded. A few shrugged. One spat on the floor and muttered something about preferring death to boredom. But they stepped forward. All of them. I keyed my wrist console. The armory locks disengaged with a heavy clunk. Weapons slid out on automated racks. Pulse rifles, plasma cutters, shock batons, even a few old-fashioned ballistic pistols. The prisoners armed themselves with the ease of long practice. The android guards watched silently, their blank faces betraying nothing. "Pair up with android officers," I ordered. "They'll guide you to your stations." Rasher slung a rifle over his shoulder. "You sure these tin cans can keep up?" "No," I said. "That's why you're here." The deck shuddered violently. A distant explosion echoed through the hull. Bogart's voice came over the intercom. "Warden, enemy vessels have breached the outer perimeter. Shields at 62%. I turned to the prisoners, my new, temporary, highly volatile crew. "Move!" I shouted. They moved. The corridors of the Alcatraz filled with the pounding of boots and the whirring of servos as prisoners and androids sprinted toward their stations. The ship shook again, harder this time. A shower of sparks rained from an overhead conduit. I ran for the lift, Rasher at my heels. "You know," he said, "this is either the dumbest thing you've ever done or the smartest. I'll let you know when it's over." The lift doors closed. The deck lurched again. Somewhere below us, something exploded. Rasher grinned. "Feels like old times." I didn't answer, because for the first time since I'd taken command of the Alcatraz, I wasn't sure if I was the warden or just another prisoner trapped in a fight I couldn't escape. The lift doors opened onto the bridge, and the war began. Chapter 3. Fire in the Void. The bridge of the Alcatraz was chaos wrapped in steel. Not the frantic, panicked chaos of an untrained crew. No, this was the violent precision of killers unleashed. Prisoners and androids moved side by side, an unholy alliance of instinct and programming. Sparks rained from ruptured conduits. The deck trembled under my boots. The air tasted like ozone and burning insulation. "Enemy vessels closing to attack range," Bogart reported, his voice maddeningly calm. "Then let's give them something to choke on," I said. Rasher Saride slid into the gunnery station like he'd been born there. His fingers danced across the controls, rerouting power, adjusting firing arcs, overriding safety protocols the androids would never have touched. "Warden," he said with a grin, "your ship's got teeth. Shame you never let her bite." The first alien salvo hit us before I could answer. A beam of searing violet energy carved across our shields, making the entire ship shudder. Warning klaxons blared. A panel exploded behind me, showering the deck with molten fragments. One of the androids took the blast full in the chest, staggered, and collapsed with a smoking hole where its torso had been. "Shields at 71%, Cagney reported, half his synthetic face missing from earlier damage. "Return fire!" I barked. This time the Alcatraz answered like a beast awakened. Rasher unleashed a barrage of plasma torpedoes, each one streaking across the void like a comet. They slammed into the nearest alien cruiser, punching through its organic hull. The ship convulsed, glowing veins rupturing, and then it exploded in a blossom of blue fire. The bridge erupted in cheers, prisoners and androids alike. But the celebration lasted only a heartbeat. Multiple hostiles inbound. Vector 390. Wells' voice was steady, but even he couldn't hide the strain in the ship's systems. I looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was adapting. Their ships moved in coordinated patterns, weaving between our shots, firing in synchronized bursts that hammered our shields. "Reroute auxiliary power to forward batteries," I ordered. "Already on it," Rasher said, sweat beading on his forehead. Another blast rocked us. The deck tilted violently. I grabbed the railing as a console exploded, sending an android flying across the bridge. It hit the far wall with a sickening crunch and slid to the floor, limbs twitching. "Casualty in Sector Bridge 2, Widmark reported. "Noted," I said. "Keep firing." The alien ships swarmed us like predators sensing blood. Their weapons sliced through space, carving molten scars across our hull. The Alcatraz groaned, a deep metallic wail that vibrated through my bones. "Warden," Bogart said, "hull integrity on Deck 14 has fallen below critical threshold." "Seal it off." "Deck 14 contains?" "Seal it." A moment later, the deck was vented into space. Through the external cameras, I watched as a dozen androids and 20 prisoners were sucked into the void, their bodies tumbling away like broken toys. My stomach twisted, but there was no time to mourn. "Target that destroyer!" I shouted. Rasher fired a concentrated burst from the forward cannons. The alien destroyer shuddered, its hull splitting open like a cracked egg. A geyser of glowing fluid erupted into space before the ship detonated. "Nice shot," I said. Rasher flashed a grin. "I used to be good at this." "You still are." The ship lurched again, harder than before. The lights flickered. Smoke filled the air. A structural support beam groaned ominously overhead. Warden, enemy boarding craft detected. Lad's voice cut through the chaos. My blood ran cold. Where? Approaching Hangar Bay 2. Of course. The one place we couldn't afford to lose. Send a squad, I ordered. Prisoners and androids, both. Already deployed, Lad replied. I switched the main display to the hangar feed. The alien boarding craft slammed into the bay doors, melting through them with a beam of white-hot energy. The doors buckled, then collapsed inward. The aliens poured through. They were tall, insectoid creatures with chitinous armor and glowing eyes. Their limbs ended in serrated blades. They moved with terrifying speed. The defenders met them head-on. A cyber-armed prisoner named Jessa charged forward, swinging a plasma axe that cleaved through alien armor like paper. An android guard tackled another alien, pinning it long enough for a prisoner to blast its head off with a pulse rifle. The hangar became a slaughterhouse. Blood, red, blue, and something neon green, splattered across the deck. Bodies fell, screams echoed. The feed flickered as a stray blast hit the camera. "Hold that bay!" I shouted, even though they couldn't hear me. The defenders fought like demons, and slowly, impossibly, they pushed the aliens back. On the bridge, Rasher let out a whoop. "They're doing it!" "Focus," I said. "We're not done." The alien fleet was regrouping. More ships were closing in. The tactical display lit up with hostile signatures. "Warden," Bogart said. "Enemy reinforcements arriving." "How many?" "All of them." The bridge fell silent. Then I straightened. "Then we hold," I said. "We hold until we can't. And then we hold some more." Rasher grinned savagely. "Now that sounds like a plan." The Alcatraz turned toward the oncoming swarm, and we charged. Chapter 4. The Last Stand of the Alcatraz. The alien fleet didn't retreat. It regrouped. And when it came back with something far worse. "Warden, new contact detected," Bogart said, his voice steady despite the smoke and sparks raining across the bridge. "Mass readings, extreme." The tactical display flickered, then stabilized. And there it was. A ship the size of a small moon, crawling with shining tendrils, its hull pulsing like a living heart. Weapons arrays glowed along its surface like the eyes of a predator, the alien flagship. My throat tightened. "All batteries target that ship." "Warden," Cagney said, "our weapons will not penetrate its outer hull." "Then we keep firing until they do." The Alcatraz roared back to life, unleashing everything we had. Plasma torpedoes, ion bursts, rail-accelerated slugs. The void lit up with streaks of fire. None of it mattered. The flagship's shields absorbed our barrage like rain on stone. Then it fired. A beam of white-hot energy lanced across space and slammed into our port side. The deck heaved, consoles exploded, a support strut tore free from the ceiling and crashed to the floor, crushing an android instantly. "Hull breach on deck 7 through 10, Widmark shouted. "Seal them! Emergency bulkheads failing!" Another blast hit us, harder. The lights flickered. The bridge shook violently. I tasted blood. "Shields at 23%, Wells reported. Rasher swore under his breath. "Warden, we can't take another hit like that." "We won't," I said, "because we're going to hit them first." The prisoners and androids looked at me. Even the machines seemed to hesitate. "Bogart," I said, "plot a collision course with the flagship." The bridge fell silent. "Warden, that maneuver has a 99.7% fatality probability." "Good thing I'm not asking for your opinion." Rasher stared at me. "You're insane." "Probably." Another blast rocked us. The starboard shields collapsed. A fire erupted near the engineering console. An android threw itself onto the flames, smothering them with its own body. "We ram that ship," I said, "or we die running." Rasher's grin returned, fierce, wild. the grin of a man who'd lived his whole life on the edge of a knife. Then let's make it count. Bogart, I said, all power to forward shields. Acknowledged. The Alcatraz groaned as power rerouted. Lights dimmed, gravity flickered, the engines screamed as they pushed the ship toward the flagship. The alien vessel reacted instantly, unleashing a storm of fire. Beams carved molten scars across our hull. Missiles detonated against our armor. The ship shook so violently I thought it would tear apart. "Impact in 10 seconds, Cagney reported, sparks pouring from the exposed circuitry in his chest. "Hold steady!" I shouted. The flagship loomed ahead, a monstrous, pulsing titan. 5 seconds! The bridge lights blew out. Smoke filled the air. The deck tilted. I grabbed the railing as the ship bucked like a wounded animal. 2 seconds! I closed my eyes. Impact! The Alcatraz hit the flagship like a hammer. The world became fire. A deafening explosion tore through the void. The forward hull crumpled. Bulkheads collapsed. The bridge shook so violently I was thrown to the floor. My ears rang. My vision blurred. But when I forced my eyes open, the tactical display showed something miraculous. The alien flagship's outer hull was cracked open, a gaping wound exposing its glowing core. "Warden!" Rasher gasped. "We did it!" "Not yet," I said. "Target the core." "Warden," Wells said, "our forward batteries are offline." "Then use whatever we have left." Rasher slammed his hand onto the firing controls. "All remaining weapons, firing!" The Alcatraz unleashed a final desperate barrage. Plasma bursts, ion beams, rail slugs, everything. The shots streaked into the exposed core. The flagship convulsed. Then it exploded. A supernova of alien energy lit the void, washing over the Alcatraz in a wave of blinding light. The shock wave hurled us backward. Systems overloaded. Panels blew out. The ship screamed, a metallic howl of agony. Then silence. Smoke drifted across the bridge. Consoles flickered weakly. Androids lay scattered, some broken, some struggling to rise. Rasher slumped in his chair, breathing hard. "Warden," Bogart said, his voice glitching. "Enemy fleet. Retreating." I stared at the display. The alien ships were fleeing, scattering into the void like insects fleeing a dying queen. We'd done it. We'd won. But the Alcatraz was dying. "Damage report," I whispered. Bogart paused. "Severe, multiple decks destroyed, structural integrity compromised, casualties, extensive." I closed my eyes. Then I stood. "We're not dead yet," I said. "Get me engineering. Get me medical. Get me whoever's still breathing." Rasher laughed weakly. "You're a stubborn bastard, Warden." "Damn right!" The Alcatraz drifted in the quiet aftermath of war, broken but alive. And so were we. Chapter 5. Freedom and Fate. The Alcatraz drifted in silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that follows screaming, the kind that settles over a battlefield when the smoke hasn't cleared and the dead haven't been counted, the kind that makes you wonder how the hell you're still breathing. I stood on what remained of the bridge. Half the consoles were dead. The ceiling was blackened. The air smelled like burnt circuitry and blood. Androids moved through the wreckage, some limping, some missing limbs, all still working because they didn't know how to stop. Rasher Saride sat slumped in the gunnery chair, a bandage wrapped around his shoulder. He looked up at me with a tired grin. "Well, Warden," he said, "I'd say that went better than expected." I snorted. "You expected to die." "Exactly." Bogart approached, his synthetic skin scorched away on one side, exposing the gleaming metal beneath. "Warden, enemy vessels have fully retreated, no further hostiles detected." For the first time in days, I let myself breathe. "Status of the ship?" I asked. Bogart paused, a rare hesitation. Severe structural damage, multiple decks destroyed, reported casualties, 112 androids and 214 prisoners. I closed my eyes. I'd known the numbers would be bad, but hearing them still felt like a punch to the chest. "Begin repairs," I said quietly. "Already underway." I turned to Rasher. "You saved this ship." He shrugged. "We saved this ship. Even the tin cans pulled their weight." One of the androids, missing an arm, turned its head toward him. "Acknowledged." Rasher blinked. Did that thing just agree with me?" "Don't get used to it," I said. 3 days later, after the fires were out and the hull breaches sealed, I stood in the ruined hangar bay with the surviving prisoners, the ones who had fought, bled, and refused to die. A Federation shuttle hovered nearby, its engines humming softly, a symbol of freedom. I held a datapad in my hand. "These are your pardons," I said. "Full exoneration. You're free to go wherever you want." Some of them cheered, some cried, some just stared, stunned. One by one, they boarded the shuttle, but not all of them. Rasher stayed where he was, arms crossed. Jessa, the cyber-armed warrior, stood beside him. The reptilian warlord loomed behind them, silent but resolute. "You're not leaving?" I asked. Rasher shook his head. "Warden, I've spent my whole life running from something. First the law, then my enemies, then myself." He looked around the hangar. "This ship, it's the first place I've ever fought for something." Jessa nodded. "You gave us a chance. Nobody ever gave us a chance." The reptilian warlord rumbled. "This vessel is strong. It needs warriors." I swallowed hard. "You understand what staying means. You'll be crew. Not prisoners, but not civilians either. This ship is still a prison ship." Rasher grinned. "Then we'll guard the galaxy's worst. Seems fitting." I extended my hand. Rasher took it. Repairs took months. Androids rebuilt themselves. Prisoners rebuilt the ship. I rebuilt something inside myself I thought had died years ago. The Alcatraz would never be the same. Too many scars, too many ghosts, but it flew again, stronger, stranger, and no longer alone. One evening, I stood on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Bogart approached silently. "Warden, new crew assignments have been finalized." "Good," I said. "We'll need them." "Warden," Bogart paused. "Your decision to enlist prisoners was statistically improbable, but effective." I smiled. "That's the thing about humans, Bogart. We're always unpredictable." "A flaw." "A strength," I corrected. He considered that. "Possibly both." Rasher entered the deck, leaning against the railing beside me. "So, Warden, where to now?" I looked out at the endless dark. "Wherever the galaxy needs a ship full of monsters, machines, and one very tired warden." Rasher laughed. "Hell of a crew. The best in the galaxy." The Alcatraz turned slowly, engines glowing, scars gleaming like metals. A prison ship no longer. A guardian. A warning. A legend. And for the first time in 6 long years, I didn't feel like the only human aboard. I felt like a captain. Epilogue. The quiet between stars. The Alcatraz drifts now through a calmer stretch of space, her scars sealed but still visible, like the lines on an old soldier's face. The androids move through the corridors with their usual precision, though some of them carry dents and scorch marks they'll never bother to repair. They don't mind. They don't feel pride. But I do. Rasher stands beside me on the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, watching the stars slide past. He's no longer a prisoner. None of them are. But he still calls me Warden, and somehow it feels less like a title and more like a nickname now. "Hell of a ship," he says. "She's earned her rest," I reply. He nods. "So have you." Maybe he's right, but rest feels like a luxury I'm not built for, not anymore. Bogart approaches, his voice steady as ever. "Warden, course is set. All systems nominal." "Good," I say. "Let's keep it that way." The android turns and leaves. Rasher lingers a moment longer, then claps me on the shoulder and heads for the lift. I stay. The stars stretch out before me, endless, indifferent, beautiful. Once, they made me feel small. Then they made me feel alone. Now, for the first time in years, they make me feel something else. Purpose. The Alcatraz was built to be a prison, a place to bury the galaxy's worst. But somewhere between the first alarm and the last explosion, she became something different. A refuge, a weapon, a home. I rest my hand on the railing and let the hum of the engines settle into my bones. "Let's see where the next horizon takes us," I whisper. And the Alcatraz answers with a low, steady vibration. As if she heard me. As if she agrees. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.